I would say by the end of the first quarter, it was pretty clear this thing was a 49er home game. I text our buddy, John Dickinson, who's there. I say, is this a Niner home game? He said, yeah. And to me, you can always tell when 44 gets a carry, and felt like he got about 10 today, but he got a couple nice ones. And the juice chants screamed out. Did you say that you heard someone say that it's the worst home field advantage?
Jason Cole tweeted, this has to be the worst home field advantage in the NFL. Not today, just Allegiant Stadium.
Well, you would say, in general, if you just look around the league, it's the most unique, right? Because you could be like, oh, New Orleans. Yeah, but the Saints fans, when they're always going to be the majority. Because I'm just using like New Orleans, like Vegas is a destination, right? You meet a lot of people that are like, oh, go to Bourbon Street. Probably not as many. I'd argue Vegas is probably more unique than New Orleans because we're less likely to go to New Orleans in California. I would say anywhere like west of Denver. I'm not saying we won't go, but it would be a pretty massive trip. When I worked for the Eagles, you never met anyone that hadn't been to Vegas, right? I would say Vegas is a pretty universal trip. Would you agree for people like adults that are just going to make in their life?
I mean, is it at the top of the list? Because it's so easy to get there. Everybody on the group thread, there's no like, well, I don't really like X.
Would you say
the weather never matters?
New York City? Would you say it's above New York City?
Yeah, just because I think it's probably cheaper. Like but I think what Vegas has is like, we can find a $45 hotel in Vegas, which does not exist anywhere else. Motels, yes. You cannot find a $45 hotel in America.
With a
KOA probably charges you more than $45.
And right in the heart of everything with fun shit to do, right?
Yeah, and it's just no. I mean,
it's probably the most unique place we have in America, and that's where they put them. Which, listen, they make the right decision. Over Christmas, I flew into Oakland, and you just drive by that place, and sometimes I think it is absolute insanity that there was an NFL, a Major League Baseball team, and an NBA team. And within a year or two, they won't have any. That place, you could blow that area up and not a soul would notice. It is, and listen, I'm not even trying to be mean to Oakland guys. It's shitty. You all know it. We all know it. It's awful. And like, did they upgrade dramatically? I mean, no one's arguing that. But it is not an advantage for them at all because, especially when you look
league, it's better for the league that they're there, right?
Dramatic. I mean,
and it's better for them, like in
every
way except for home field advantage.
Now, it's not near what the Chargers have in LA, right? But I would say for a team that kind of hung its hat on, like, we have fans, and our fans, like, you've been to Raider games at the Coliseum, they can impact the game. Today was like not even close. And it's going to be hard. Like the Chiefs, they are lucky that Denver's going to suck for a while. The Chargers don't have a fan base. And they was like, yeah, the Chiefs are going to beat us most times no matter what. So even if they come, whatever. But like you do, if you ever get decent, you have a home game against the Steelers, you have a home game against the Packers, you have a home game against the Cowboys, like you're going to lose. Like in terms of the fan base, like it's going to be advantage them. And that's only going to get worse, I think. It is. I mean, it's bad now. Today was pretty eye-opening. I expected there to be Niner fans there. I didn't expect there to be that many Niner fans. Did you?
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't think that long about it.
The only way it gets better is if you get good for a sustained amount of time and local fans are convinced that coming to the game is, you really become part of the community. And that takes a while. It takes a while to happen. And, ticket prices have to be somewhat reasonable for people. And it's always going to be hard for those tickets. Usually if the home team is bad, the ticket prices come down. But the Raiders, it doesn't apply to them. The ticket price doesn't come down when the Raiders aren't good because the road team brings half the fans or more.
Well, for example, like the Golden Knights, they just get to be good. They're not bringing back, it's hockey. They just get to own the area. When the A's eventually move there within the next couple of years, if they're good, which typically they cycle through and they'll be good if they move there in 2 years, that's probably right around the time, they'll be fine. They'll have a little fan base. It'll be fun. The NFL is kind of unique that most people over 10 years old in a city, if they don't root for that city's team, or if the city doesn't have a team, they got a squad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people,
But I also
you meet a ton of people that are from random areas that are fans of other teams.
I also think just the NFL, I've talked about this for a long time. The NFL's schedule, the fact that they only play 17 games, that there's so few games, that they play on the same day every week, you can build your calendar around it, is just such an advantage for the sport, right? Like Blackhawks fans aren't traveling in on a Tuesday.
No.
But, you know, if you play on Monday, maybe you play a Monday home game a year, maybe you play 2. But I can just bank on it's on the weekend. And then that's it. It's just on the weekend. I can travel to all your games. Suns fans aren't going to Chicago. I want to see the Bulls. Let me check. Oh, the Suns play on Wednesday. Maybe a couple people go, but not freaking 35,000 of them.
Yeah.
So they're just at a disadvantage for that reason. They're just at a disadvantage. And whatever. There's a lot of ways in which their lives are better, but a home field advantage is just not one of them. It's just not.
Well, and I would say this. Their start moving to a new city has been weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't their fault. They weren't allowed to have anyone in the place in 2020. And looking back, that was obviously the wrong decision. Place should have been packed. But regardless of that, like no one was there. And that set them back. And then the next year, they had a pretty weird year, right? They had a moment in the town, even though they made the playoffs. One of the players killed someone. Right, the coach got fired. Like it was just pretty tumultuous year for the franchise. Now they ended up making the playoffs and had an incredible final moment at the stadium. Right, it was fucking sweet. So they feels like they kind of took a step forward, but now it feels like they take 4 steps backwards. So the momentum going into a new city is kind of zilch. It's just like,
well,
meh.
They showed up with 2 faces of the franchise and now have none: the coach and the quarterback. They showed up with John Gruden and Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Now, and they've lost. Well, maybe let's not say they have none. Let's say they've lost their 2 faces of the franchise since they arrived, for better or worse. Maybe they're better off. I don't know, but they lost them, and they lose a bunch of games.
I had some Raider fans texting me today, like, "Are we sure this kid isn't better than Carr?" It's like, well, based on today, yeah, he's probably playing better than Derek was.
Nick Mullins once looked. Did he have to do better than Nick Mullins did against the Raiders in his debut? I can't remember what his numbers were. Mullins won, right? Or did he?
Yeah, he won. Yeah, because Favre called him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Was that Thursday Night Football?
It was Thursday Night Football, yeah. It's just very part of what makes the Niners such a big brand is they've been doing it for so long in so many different iterations. It's like the Lakers. Because I had someone tweet at me today when I was fucking around with Raider fans on the internet. Like, what's the difference last 20 years, Niners and Raiders? Like, I don't know. 5 conference championships, multiple Super Bowls in the last 12 years. You guys have 0 playoff wins. You guys made the playoffs twice. You guys are just kind of irrelevant in the internet age, where when the internet, part of being relevant in the internet age is, now you could argue maybe you could, in the 70s and 80s, there was less going on. So if you were good, you could exponentially get bigger. And some teams did, right? The Cowboys, the Steelers, I'd say the Niners in the 80s, individuals, Michael Jackson, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali. Like you could argue if you got super, super huge, you could actually be bigger than what you can now.
50 million people watch you on a random Sunday.
But you had to be super, super huge. Yeah. You had to be super, super huge, right?
Yep.
But I would say in the internet age, like Peyton Manning didn't win a Super Bowl for like the first half of the internet. And it was like he was pretty big because he was always winning. He was always in sweet games. It was just always a thing, right? Like Kobe post Shaq was like just, you can be really, you guys have just been irrelevant. And listen, the Niners in 2000s were irrelevant. They were a joke. But I'd say the last 12 years, like they've had major, major moments, and it's helped them because they've had shitty years too. Chip Kelly, Tom Sula, 2020 when they got booted to Arizona. But their good years are like conference championship, Super Bowl. Even if you lose Super Bowl,
coaches.
Yeah, just you pop.
Famous players.
You pop. And you got to find a way to pop. And it doesn't even feel like the Raiders are close to popping. Not even close to popping. And here, you know what a problem? is the Chiefs are clearly going nowhere. I mean, if you had to bet the next 5 years, what would you put like their over-under win total? It'd be like 12.5, right? And you'd probably like, over the next 5 years average, if you told me they average 13.2 wins, it's believable. Like they could have a 16-win season, they could have an 11-win season, but they'd have a lot of 12 and 13-win seasons. One thing you see with the Chargers now is like if their defense is just okay and they are healthy on offense.
Okay.
Well, it's been off, but I'm just saying, like, how are they going to suck with that guy?
Yeah.
Like they have a top 5 quarterback, guys. Now they're franchise, whatever, bigger nationally than local. But I'm just saying, like, for you to win, you have those two teams that you play 4 times. Even if the Broncos suck now for the next 3 years, which is easily possible, how do you overcome the 2 teams that are just going to be in your division that even if you kind of, because divisionally, right, you play them tough every once in a while. Let's just say the Raiders every once in a while are going to go 2-2 in those games. Those teams, because of their quarterbacks, are just more likely to be double digits all the time.
It's not like you dominate the Broncos every year.
No. I mean, they had to beat them in overtime. Derek's last
They do get
moment.
to play at the Chargers, which is actually what everyone else gets to do when they come to Vegas.
True, but he's better than you most of the time, right? So,
Yeah.
like, my point is, even if you individually play them well, on the aggregate, they get to play all these other games where it's just like, oh, yeah, Herbert threw 5 touchdowns. Oh, yeah, Mahomes threw behind his back for game winner. Like, they're just going to win a lot of games where it's clear you just struggle to win your vacuum games. Like, you're just playing Team X, uncommon opponent. More likely than not, you're going to lose. Obviously, the Chiefs are more likely to win. And now that Herbert, like, if he just stays erect, they're going to win more games than they lose, even if Brandon Staley is their coach. They won today, right? Chargers?
They won today.
So they're 10. Are they the 5 seed right now?
Chargers are.
I guess it depends.
Chargers are the 6th seed. They're 10-6. Yeah, because Baltimore is 10-5. So if Baltimore loses, they are the Chargers then become the 6th. I don't know what the tiebreaker is there. Yeah, if Baltimore loses and is 10-6, they have the same record, but the Chargers have a better conference record. So I think they would move ahead of Baltimore to the 5 seed. If Baltimore wins, they're 11-5, and they stay a game ahead of the Chargers.
So Baltimore's in the playoffs today, I guess, huh? Because these other teams can't get to 10.
Yeah, because New England's 8-8, Miami's 8-8.
Yeah, Chargers are in the playoffs too. Chargers made the playoffs.
Yeah, they're both. They've Chargers have clinched the playoff spot. The only spot that isn't clinched is the South, which will be the 4 seed, and then the last spot, the 7 spot.
So the only spots that are not clinched in the playoffs are the 2 7 seeds, right? Other than that,
yeah, everyone is clinched in the NFC in the top 6. So Seattle, Green Bay, Detroit, all 8-8 in the NFC. New England, Miami, 8-8. Obviously, New England has the head-to-head against Miami, the tiebreaker. So Miami needs to win and have New England lose.
But back to what I was saying about the Chargers and the Raiders. Listen, the Chargers have had more success over the 20 years when the Raiders have been mainly irrelevant. But this is their best quarterback. So they always got to overcome Dean and the cheapness and usually a coach that's probably not quite good enough given their talent. But this is their most talented quarterback.
Which is enough to get you the playoffs. They may not, they may not never fulfill their destiny of being a championship team or his destiny, right?
If I told you right now after this season, Herbert does not miss a game for 5 years, what would their over-under playoff burst be during that time? Doesn't miss a game for 5 straight years.
Yeah, I'd say they
60% of the time, 3 out of 5.
Yeah, three playoff years.
Would it shock you if
because Pittsburgh, well, okay, the Jets need a quarterback, Tennessee, Cleveland, Vegas, Indy, like everyone, the AFC's got a lot of people trying to figure it out right now, right?
That's your problem.
They're only the thing that stands in the Chargers' way is they're not going to have a lot of room for error because they're going to have to probably be the wild card most years, right?
But there are 3 wild card spots.
But that's the point on the Raiders. Now, multiple teams from the same division can make a wild card, but
I mean, you look at the Raiders in a year where it turns out the 7 seed in both conferences, and maybe after we have like 10 years of data, it'll prove to be like that's always a pretty wide open spot. It is wide fucking open with a bunch of 8-8, 7-8 teams. Raiders ain't even close.
Yeah, last year was 9-7-1 Pittsburgh and 9-8 Philly that made it the year. But remember the AFC 2 years ago was 11-5 Indy was the 7 seed, but that was the COVID year. Maybe everyone won more. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Chicago was 8-8.
I wonder if that year is going to prove to be a throwaway year.
I think it probably will be.